Welcome to People, Places, and Parables, highlighting people and the positive effect they have in our community.
Hey, Chris. This is Chris. I have to tell you, we have so much fun doing the People, Places, and Parables podcast.
Yep.
I sometimes even don't recognize myself. I want to welcome you today. This is the third interview. And just when I think there are no curveballs, we're trying to get Scott's audio. Turns out it wasn't Scott's audio. It was this guy's mixer. I did not have him turned up. So we even had Max Gola trying to help us out. I'm really excited about having you here today, Scott. Scott is one of my heroes. Scott founded a program called Fresh Start Incorporated, and we're talking about 21 sober living homes, and I'm trying to remember how many men and women there are now. It's over 100, correct?
It's about 177.
Wow,
177. Yeah.
that's unbelievable. Well, I
Men and women.
appreciate you being here today. How when I first heard about you, I wanted to meet you. I got a kick out of your name because I kept thinking it was Party with a T, and I'm like, no. But what got the ball rolling for you to take this on? I mean, I went back on your website to read about the first house, and my gosh, you have 21 now.
Yeah. I don't know how it happened, Chris. This was not an intentional thing. I do service work in the jail. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've got 17 years of continuous sobriety under my belt. And when I was about 5 years sober, yeah, if you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know, but you have a sponsor. And
Mhm.
my sobriety was I was kind of getting stale with it. I wasn't going to meetings as much. I wasn't sponsoring other people. And, I was just kind of just working all the time in my other job. And um, he suggested that I start going into the jail. Now, he really didn't suggest things. He gave orders. And so, so I started doing the jail meeting because nobody had been doing it for a year, and it needed some attention. So I did what he asked, and I can tell you the last thing I wanted to do was go in the Penobscot County Jail and do a meeting in there. It was rough and tumble, and it's not so much anymore, but it was at the time. And I did it for a number of years, and I would get familiar with the people in the revolving door, and you become friendly, and you sponsor people, or I sponsored guys in jail, and when they got out, and um and a lot of them had to end up going back to the same when they got out of jail at midnight, because that's when they let them
Mhm.
out. They'd end up going back
Wow.
to up behind the Hope House or the crack house or the street, and never have a chance and be back in jail again. And I saw this revolving door thing going on for about 4 years, and somehow I finished paying off my own house, and I don't know how that happened. I was fortunate to be able to finally get through that 15-year mortgage and pay my own house off, and I kind of felt that I needed to do something, so I had found this house on Ohio Street. It was Farrell and Lower Ohio Street, which is a
Mhm.
pretty rough and tough place. There's a lot of drug houses there, and this was a drug house right next door to King's Daughters home,
Mhm.
at 89 Ohio Street, which we now own too. Um,
Wow.
um, was our neighbors with young women who attended college, and it was kind of as a dormitory. And anyway, so I ended up buying this house and taking a chance, and that's how it started. um
Wow.
House number two came less than a year later, with a person who was a corrections officer in the jail. She was getting a divorce and wanted to sell her house, and sold it. It's right across from the barn in Brewer. It was house number two. And it just I don't know, kept filling
Snowballed.
filling up, and I could buy another house, so I bought another house. And that's it. That's definitely how it got started. And now it's we're the largest in the state. We're the second largest in New England. Um, as far as sober recovery houses go, and yeah,
That's fantastic. And I
all
was
by
looking at
accident.
your well, and it's interesting how things can happen that way. We started Welcome to Housing. I go back to when I was helping a friend at the pre-release. Friend's ex-husband's the pre-release, and I became a big brother with Big Brothers Big Sisters. When my wife said, "You can help him, why can't you help a kid?" And 4 kids, and 18 years later,
Yeah,
we raised money for the area homeless shelter, and next thing you know, 10 years later, we're taking on Welcome to Housing. So it's amazing how things are meant to happen, and sometimes we just go along for the ride.
that's all I
Um,
am. Just along
ev
for the ride. Yep.
every time I talk with you, I'm impressed, and so many things I don't understand about it, and I have to wonder how many people out there, that hear about Fresh Start Incorporated and so forth. I did not realize until not that maybe a year or so ago that there is a whole association of sober living homes. That makes me feel really good. If you could explain a little bit about that, I mean
Yeah.
that's fabulous.
Yeah, it's the Maine Association of Recovery Residences, and it's part of the NAR, which is the National Association of Recovery Residences. And what they do is certify houses for safety, for accountability, for everything to do with a sober house, and it's a um, quasi-state licensing. It's not a license, but it's a quasi-state certification of
Hmm.
recovery homes. Now, obviously, not every recovery home is MAR certified, but all of ours are. And I think that it's added a lot. It allows us to MAR also has money for scholarships, and because where our houses are certified, we somebody walked in here. It's okay.
That's okay.
We can we can um we can offer 22, or it was 22. They dropped it down because they cut funding. But anyway, we have
Hmm.
16 houses, excuse me, 16 beds that are scholarship beds to help people that come here with nothing, which is a lot, to have 2 free months of rent to get situated. And
That
that's
makes a
it.
lot of sense too,
Yeah,
because of the cost of rent is insane. I just retired from
insane.
21 years of real estate, and it was disheartening to see how difficult it is for people. I have a brother I lost to his alcoholism. When we talked to the people with Section 8, and they said 6 to 7, I'm like, months? No, years.
Mm.
And it was just jaw dropping. One of the things that I think is fabulous, and I've heard reference to it, and then I looked at your website, is the structure you have, the level of people, of residents, that it's almost like once they reach a certain level, they can be basically guides for people that are just starting out with your program. If you could
Right.
explain that a little bit, that I think that the attention to detail and discipline, I think, is something that people in recovery obviously need.
It's
That's
yeah,
everybody needs, but especially when you're dealing with an addiction.
absolutely. Um, we have a phasing system so people phase up. First of all, we don't have an end game. You can live in Fresh Start forever. Um, yeah, I felt at first that it puts way too much pressure. If I was
Mhm.
just coming off the street and I knew I had to be out in 6 months, well, my mind is already out.
Exactly.
I'm afraid, and what's going to happen in 6 months, and I've lived through that too. So um, I get that, and we have people that have been with us 5 or 6 years.
Mhm.
We try to have, the people that are with us the longer become the house managers. Everybody here is in recovery. All of us, the staff, all the house managers, everybody is in recovery in some way or another. And we require people to attend meetings, recovery-based meetings, whether it's AA, NA, Wellbriety, etc., to or they can do it through faith. There's some faith-based stuff too, which is
Mhm.
fine. And yeah,
So you're really providing a safe environment. I remember when I gave up drinking, I was lucky I didn't go down the road. I didn't suffer the addiction that my brother did, but I remember I was invited when I was at broadcasting school to go to a halfway house for the weekend with a friend of mine. My classmate had years before poisoned his spinal fluid with alcohol.
Yep.
And I was just so impressed. And because when I first stopped drinking, almost everybody, including relatives, "Hey, you want a beer?" Once in a while, it's like, "No, no, no." After you've told them blue in the face, you're going to stop drinking. And the safety of the environment, and one of the stories that I love to share with people, I have a lot of respect for bikers. I had one that used to watch out for me when I first moved to Maine down on the coast. We were at a meeting, an open meeting down in Massachusetts outside of Boston. Huge motorcycle group comes up. Chains, leathers, the whole 9 yards. And I jokingly looked at my friend. I said, "Well, there goes the neighborhood." And he looks at me and goes, "They're all sober." I was elated. I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
The stereotype of, drinking and living hard and so forth. Here are people in recovery. It's a good example of the Brick Church in Bangor. We do a lot with them. They have the free clothing program, and they have a lot of other services, but that's the Biker Church of America, and they're sober, which is fabulous. So
Last Chance Motorcycle Club is a sober motorcycle club in Ellsworth. Just so you
That's
know.
wonderful.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we just had an interview with Sarah Bowden down in Ellsworth. She runs the Community Closet 207, and they fill a lot of gaps like Welcome to Housing does, especially for young mothers and so forth. Obviously, with confidentiality and anonymity, can you share some of the success stories of some people without using names? I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
sure. We had a gentleman that came to us probably 6, 7 years ago, and right out of jail, and he didn't make it. He didn't last long, and back out he went. We do
mhm.
random, just so you know, we do random UAs. You have to be sober to you have to be clean to stay in Fresh Start,
And
and
a acronym, the UA is.
urine analysis.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep, yep. And anyway, so he had failed one of those and was asked to leave. We try to get people to a detox when we ask them to leave to whatever, to a hospital, to where, or to a
So
friends,
they're not
whatever.
being
So they
abandoned.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, we don't
yeah.
the only way we don't throw people out on the street, and it's very rare that we have to have help in extricating somebody, so we
Mhm.
don't have a lot of police interaction or anything else. And
That's good.
part of our policy is to be a good neighbor. That's one
Mhm.
of the most important things that we can do, is to be a good neighbor, and I think that's definitely helped the growth and helped our stability too. But anyway, he came in and didn't make it. Ended up going back to jail, went to prison, got out of prison, come back to Fresh Start, didn't make it again, and ended up on the streets all summer long, and in August of, I guess it's been 5 years now, probably, in that neighborhood, 4 years, he came back. He'd finally had enough, and he
Mm.
stayed with us. Ended up becoming a house manager,
Wow.
and today he works for a really good company that I worked for a long time, and they have been very great at hiring recovery residences from Fresh Start. They have
That's
several
fantastic.
and it's a big company too. And I'll drop the name. It's FW Web.
Oh,
Y-
wonderful.
Yeah, and so today, he has a very nice girlfriend, um, a beautiful apartment, a car, a job at FW Web that pays him very well, and he has a good life today, and he still comes in to visit. He still maintains contact, and still a consultant for FW Web, so I see him occasionally too.
Well, that's
So
fabulous. That's
yeah, so
absolutely fabulous.
that's a fantastic story, and he's spoken before at the State House with us, and um,
Wow.
so yeah, he's got a great story. And there's
And
several others. There's a lot more.
That's wonderful, and I think that's one of the things. I think you've seen a meme that I've shared. My wife and I live in the Tree Streets neighborhood, and the City Reach Church had the rental house, houses down from us. Of all the people that rented there when it was a women's group home for recovery, the best neighbors you could possibly ask for. And people need to understand there's so many different factors out there. I have a meme that I shared that says erase stigma, increase empathy. And please correct me if I'm wrong. We also sit in whenever we can on the main reentry network. From what I understand from years ago, and I think it's probably still the case, that a lot of people that are incarcerated, a majority of them were under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time. The decisions that they made, the actions that they took, they would never, ever do when they were sober. And I think if people understand that, given any situation, the gentleman that I was helping out with the Bangor pre-release had an alcoholic blackout. I remember asking him, why didn't you contest it? Why didn't you go to a jury? And he said, Chris, I was completely blacked out. He had no inkling of what happened. He didn't think he did the crime that he was accused of, but he didn't dare. He went for a plea agreement, and God rest his soul, he went through the correctional system 3 times. He was an absolute good example to one of my littles from Big Brothers Big Sisters. One of my 4 littles had an older brother who was incarcerated, and he made my his little brother, his blood real little brother, think it was like Club Med, that it was a big joke. And his mother didn't know what to do. So I ended up taking him down to see my friend Daryl down in, not Cushing, but down in Warren. It was a minimum security. And apparently the guard had never seen the Newhart show where he has the inn, Larry, Daryl, and Daryl, because my little brother's real name was Daryl and this guy's name was Daryl. And I looked at the guard and I said, "Hi, my name is Chris. This is my little brother Daryl, and this is my buddy Daryl." And a very big guard just looked at me and grunted.
Yeah.
But one of the things that amazes me too is the camaraderie and the connection. When I worked at Hope House, for a couple of years, and of all the jobs I've ever worked at, I've never had a job where there's been so little for politics. Everybody was there for one reason, and I believe just about every counselor was sober, but I learned so much from it. And what I would love to know, I'd love to get your opinion on, is when I see advertisements on TV, and this is what my brother and I were talking about. When I was a kid, and I would see people drink, as my father's business associates at a convention. And these guys who were nice, warm, loving uncle types to me, when they'd be at a conference or something, they'd be drunken jerks. My brother, on the other hand, who was 10 years older than me, he said, well, growing up, because my parents had these big cocktail parties, my brother would go around cleaning up the glasses. He always perceived people that were drinking as being really happy. And my brother, like a lot of people that struggle with addiction, was extremely intelligent, was really gifted with his hands. He was a carpenter. He fixed up classic cars. He went through several relationships. His last relationship ended. He almost ended up homeless, literally in his van down by the Penobscot. And he was sitting in my car outside of the hotel on Main Street. And he looked at me, and it breaks my heart to think of it. He looked at me and goes, how the hell did this happen? How did I get here? And I'm like, I really didn't know what to say. I understood what happened, but of my 3 older brothers, he saved my life twice. He was a great parent. And it really it really hit home that it really is a disease. And at Hope House, I remember the national program Treatment Works with an exclamation point. I love the phrase. It was, trying drugs or alcohol is a choice. Getting addicted to them is not. And there's a lot of truth to that. For people that are out there now that are listening to this, what advice do you have for them if they have a loved one that they just can't reach? My brother Greg, for example, his 3rd relationship, she didn't want him to go to AA. I offered to go. I learned if you go to AA, a person like me, I go, "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm here to learn." because originally when I used to go to them at Hope House as being a staff member, I felt awkward. But what advice would you have for somebody that's watching somebody go down the tubes, as they say?
I wish I could answer that question. I think that for me, and this is how I look at it, if I wasn't ready until I was ready. And
Mm,
when you said that your brother said, "How did this happen?" I said the exact same thing. Yeah,
mm,
17 years ago, I woke up and I liked drugs and I liked alcohol. I heard in a meeting once a guy say he was married to alcohol and had affairs with drugs, and that describes me.
mm,
Totally describes me. And when I got done doing drinking and doing drugs, I woke up. I used to say I had a moment of clarity, but I think
mhm,
it was just a moment of sobriety. And I looked around, I looked all around and I said, how the hell did this happen again? It wasn't the
mm,
first time I'd been down that road, but I'd
mhm,
managed to put things aside, and then slowly alcohol worked back into my life, and then slowly drugs did, and
mm,
then it took over. And there was nothing more important to me than drugs and alcohol at that time. Not my family, not my job, not my business, nothing. It took all of it, and it took it all from me too. And that's when I woke up one day, like I say, maybe a moment of sobriety, and said,
mm,
How did this happen again?" It was, and I feel that way. And when you said that, it brought all that back. So I
mm,
appreciate you bringing that up and saying it that way.
mm,
And as far as somebody that has a loved one, I suggest they go to Al-Anon.
mhm,
Al-Anon is helps people. It's called um, detach with love, and it teaches people how to not be a victim, because it's a family disease. I believe that,
mhm,
like you're an example of that. You had a loved one that you couldn't help,
mm.
and there's nothing you could do to help him, but you have to take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself first, you can't help anybody else. And that's would be my suggestion for somebody that has a loved one, to get the tools necessary to take care of themselves, so that then they perhaps can be of aid.
And I'm gonna share a little bit of a parable. My brother's son, Jesse, he was born in Maine, and Greg went out to Arizona with his new wife and took Jesse and left Jesse's sister, Greg's daughter, Jenny, behind. And Jesse met a wonderful lady, and they were dating for a long time, and it took a while for them to get engaged. I never knew her last name. Come to find out, she was from New Jersey, where I was from. Finally had her last name. I found out she was from Allendale, where we were from, and her last name was, and I said, "Well, that's funny. I remember a kid, it was in my class, a nice kid named Steve. I had an eighth grade yearbook my father got. I left before eighth grade, and he looked like a test pattern. He had houndstooth and paisley and the big poofy hair. It was her brother. And that is a very small world story, but the heartbreaking part is she said he died of alcohol poisoning. And that just blew me away, and it opened up the door to understanding why that Jesse and his wife and their 2 sons, they kept distance from Greg for so long. I still feel bad because, Greg was living in Bangor at the time. Our mother, we had different fathers. Our mother, had passed away at 95. She lived a long life. I have, like, 15 interviews with her on YouTube, and, the next oldest brother from me, between me and Greg, had been incarcerated. He got out. I knew he was coming. My wife knew he was coming. He made it in time for the funeral, and I didn't realize what a rift Greg and Eric had between them. And before the funeral even started, Greg took off. And I kicked myself because I should have confronted him about it, but instead we're living in the same community, and we didn't talk for I don't know how long. And then finally, the lady that was his third long-term relationship messaged me on Facebook. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to leave. I'm going to sell the house. And he had taken this little tiny bungalow of a house and turned it into a Shangri-La. It was beautiful what he could do. Um, And I think if there's any lesson here is to really, for me to notice red flags more. And I understand that it's up to the person who's addicted to get better, but to be there for him the last few months, and I have to tell you, the thing that I kept telling him and sharing with everybody is if you're going to get into recovery, this area of Bangor is great.
Mhm.
Penquist helped him out, all kinds of things. He actually found a place to live. A lady was a front desk clerk at the hotel that he was staying outside of, actually had half of a house, half of a small ranch for him to stay in. Excellent. So, we've got about 5 more minutes. What are some of the, things that you're looking for to get help with? I know that you folks are probably looking at the opioid settlement funds. What are some of the things that are coming up the line for you and Fresh Start?
Sure. First of all, I wanna say that we are fully self-supporting. We don't rely upon, any state funds, federal funds, you know? We do have grant money. We
Mhm,
did receive some of the opioid settlement funds from the county, not from the
mhm.
city of Bangor, but from the county, and we that is a scholarship fund to help people come in. It's
Excellent.
we have enough, members pay rent,
Mhm.
and the rent pays the bills for to keep this ship rolling, so when political winds change, as they will, they go back and forth, as they change and, you see, nonprofits get hit pretty hard sometimes when things change and things aren't going in their direction. We've seen it lately
Mhm.
with certain nonprofits, and it can be very devastating for us. I'm happy to say that we are self-supporting, so any donation of dollars always goes to somebody's rent, always.
That's
Um,
excellent.
for donations, so that's if it's money. If it isn't, we can always use, there's churches around that do a lot for us. I'll mention them because I can. St. Patrick's Episcopal Church in Brewer for several years now has made welcoming boxes for people coming into Fresh Start. It
Wow.
contains food, snacks, um, treats, and a prayer. And it's a nice big box, so and I'm
Cool.
gonna tell you that is that brightens the people's days up. Hygiene items are in that box also, and, so anybody that comes into Fresh Start gets a box of goodies.
That's
And,
fantastic.
the other, St. John's Episcopal Church, has, Fresh Start s things too, and they collect for us, sheets, blankets, pillowcases, the stuff that are wear items for us, and those are wear items.
Mhm.
The, oh, I forgot the name of the Congregational church at the corner of, um,
Hammond Street?
no, Broadway. Is it a Congregational All Souls, Congregate All Souls. They do, every 2 weeks, they bring in, home cooked meals
Oh,
that
wow.
we circle them around. There's enough for 3 houses in one of their deliveries, so we rotate those around, and so the religious community has been extremely supportive of,
That's
what we
excellent.
do. And so, our wear items consist of beds, as you know, Chris. We've gotten a bunch from you. Beds, dressers, washers, dryers. We supply anybody that comes in does not have to buy toilet paper, paper towels, laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, nothing. They do have to supply food, but nobody goes hungry. And,
That's wonderful.
everything else is taken care of. You don't.
So you take the stressors out because I know that
Right.
when you're starting out, most people when they're starting out, when they're going to school or something, they have that support system. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I'm so glad Penobscot Job Corps isn't going anywhere because it's the same
Yeah.
idea.
Right.
You have to have that support, and it's amazing how little things like personal care items and so
Yeah.
forth, the cost and everything.
Yeah. You think of what it would cost to go to the laundromat,
Wow.
you know?
I wanna thank you, Scott. I love you, and I love what you do, and it's such a benefit to the community. And I will let you know when we put this on the air, and I hope people out there understand that people are suffering with addiction, if they're suffering with mental health issues or homelessness, or a combination of all 3, because that quite oftentimes are intertwined, they are not the boogeyman.
Right.
learn their stories so you can help and not hinder.
Yep. And any donation goes to somebody's rent. Just
And we will have all the contact information out there for everybody. And Scott, thank you for what you do. And if you
thank you,
can hold
Chris.
on for just a moment after we hit stop,
Yeah.
it'll upload. And I love this because it's very conversational and simple. And you
Yes.
know what? That's exactly 30 minutes.